What's going on, Safe House?
Hey,
We back
Safe House
again.
family, we're back for the last installment of Safe House
I'm kind of sad that it's over. You know, that means we're going to have to find some other couples that we can have conversation with.
Yeah, well, it doesn't mean it's the end of Safe House Conversations as a content topic, right? We're going to have conversations with different couples on different topics because it's relevant. But this series on conversations is coming to an end. We're going to wrap it up and talk a little bit about sickness and health.
Yeah, this one was really good because, I think I said in the video, you marry the healthy person, but then the longer you stay together, issues just arise. And so, like I said, you find that there are challenges when your spouse is sick.
Yeah.
So we kind of talk through that process of what that looks like.
And sometimes it's just not getting sick. It's just getting older.
Yeah, sometimes I'm just sick of you.
Right.
Sorry.
You see the real feelings come out on video.
Right.
But enjoy the episode.
Yes.
Remember, like, share, and subscribe. Give us commentary in the comments below. Reach out to us through the usual means.
Yes.
Let us know how this episode has impacted you. And now for Safe House Conversations.
Yes. Love you guys.
Love you.
Peace.
So didn't we have a viewer that asked about discovery?
Oh, yes, we did. We had a viewer that asked about discovery. So the way I was going to kind of phrase that is like in sickness and in health, okay? Because sometimes sickness changes us. Okay, and so you fall in love with a healthy person, but then let's just be honest, as we get older, things change, and so we have to be able to adjust. So how do we now adjust to this new space of where our person is now? So one of the things I'll start with me. So I feel like one of the toughest times. I mean, everybody has tough times in their marriage, but I feel like one of the toughest times probably for me was when menopause hit. And it changed me in such a way that I wasn't even expecting. Because I'm normally like really nice, really, like you said, the caregiver. I want to love on everybody. Like when menopause hit, I was like, I don't want to be bothered with nobody. I ain't taking care of nobody. I was like unkind. I didn't want to be bothered with Andre. I didn't want to be bothered with anybody. It was like my emotions became the ruler of who I was. And I literally could not control it. Like I said, because with menopause, when you just lose those hormones, it's like things happen. And so it was one of those things where, like we were talking about this yesterday, I said, I think I had a harder time adjusting to it because I didn't really know anything about menopause. Because my mom died at 59, so she had ovarian cancer. So I didn't really get a chance to talk to my mom about menopause and what that looked like and how it affects you. So in the moments where I'm going crazy, where I'm thinking like, man, I'm really going to leave this guy because everybody's getting on my nerve. I'm going to leave the kids. I'm going to leave him. I'm just going to drive away and not come back home. Right. I'm catching a flight, and all of these thoughts are like seriously going through my mind. But what I appreciate is Andre was very sympathetic in that moment. And there are still, so menopause has changed me completely. There are still parts of me, like, well, we went to the same church together, and it's like, oh, you love everybody. You kiss everybody. Now I don't do none of that. I literally like have to force myself to like hug people, like, oh, yay. It's like what used to be not what effortless for me is now I have to take a lot of effort to do that. I got to be very intentional and purposeful to be like, okay, let me go say hi. Let me be nice. Let me do all those things. And so that's now made me a different person. And so now Andre, even the kids have had to adjust to, okay, mom's just kind of left us to our own devices. My mom doesn't care anymore. And it's not that I don't, but once again, I'm saying all that to say that he's had to adjust to that. And I think he's done a really good job. But like we were talking about the other day, he said it was because he kind of saw his mom go through it. So he had an advantage that I didn't have. So once we started talking about this whole menopause thing, he was very empathetic. He was very forgiving, very, gave me probably more grace than I deserved. because he saw something that I didn't see. He had already experienced it, with his mom. And so, like I said, sometimes it's like that, like I said, until we experience health crises, we don't know how we're going to react. Like Andre always says, when he gets sick, I just leave him alone. He's like, she'll just let me die. I'm like, I check on you. I'm like, I ask you if you want orange juice and all this other kind of stuff. But in his mind, I don't know how his mama took care of him. I don't know. But in his mind,
I'll be in there singing Negro spirituals. I'll be in there like, coming for to carry me home, swing low, sweet chariot. She'd be like, here's some ramen. Throw it across the room, hit the floor, pow, cook. Now I gotta go down, wrap up in my cold, take my sick bed with me, go cook it. And
I'm learning how to listen more because sometimes I think he's just extra. If he get real sick,
I'm a hypochondriac.
He's like,
I am a hypochondriac.
I'm just like writing his will.
I've inherited that from
giving me
my
all
mom.
the passwords.
I'm a hypochondriac,
I don't
right?
make it. I tape the envelope to the door. I'm like, babe, you're gonna be fine.
I'm like, I ain't never had a cold like this before.
Right.
I think this is it, right? This is the final one.
Feel different. But guess how that's changed me though. Now I do recognize that that's a real thing for him. Like at first I wasn't really taking it seriously. Like, okay, this guy's just being extra.
Yeah.
But for him, that's a real thing.
Yeah. And part of that's due to childhood trauma. So I was a child to older parents. And what you don't realize is all of their older friends, they die a lot, right? It's like, so as I'm coming up, all I felt like I went to was funerals, right? I was like going to funerals all the time. Everybody died. It's like, I thought going to hospital was like, oh, the funeral's coming pretty soon after this, right? So, so I'm like, yeah, getting sick equals die, right? So... Yeah, so growing up is just, you kind of thought people get sick and die, and my mom was a little bit of a hypochondriac. She thought your boy was a tumor, right? And she didn't realize she was pregnant, right? But she was good on, and I inherited some of that, right? But no, it is one of those things though that really I had to step back and say, okay, you are being a little bit extra, and I had to recognize. But, I'm also, I'm scared. Sometimes I'm fearful of death, and I've watched my friends die. My best friend, 40-some years old, passed away, lost both parents, both of my brothers, So, yeah, it's kind of a real thing.
So I've had to adjust to that because, once again, I recognize that that's a change. So the question I'm asking is, it's like when you notice that your spouse has changed, what is now your response to that? Do you want that? Do you want the old person back? Or do you recognize that this change, now what do you have to do to kind of help facilitate this change? Because sometimes the change is, is for the better.
And I'm going to add a little qualifier to this before y'all answer too, because it's not just something like menopause. It's just like, let's be real. For me, you turn 50-something, and stuff don't rise the way it used to. Okay, it's not window. It used to be when you could snap your fingers like cow, like okay, yep, we're ready. Okay, oh boy, okay, and
that's a different world.
It's a different world, Now it takes a couple of, spray the stuff in there, and then eventually
we make appointments.
Yeah.
Because now once again, because that change has occurred.
Right.
So now I'm like, okay, well now I know it's not going to be like it was, like 20 years ago, like you ready. So it's like, okay. Right. When we first introduced the concept of scheduling it seemed weird, to be like, well, no, but this works.
Right.
Because if we need to do preparation in order to make this happen, then we do need to schedule it. We do need to be able to say, okay, it's going to be in the morning. I'll see you on Saturday morning. I'll see you whenever. But once again, that's a shift. Yeah. That's a change. Right.
So I just wanted to sort of say it doesn't have to just be something as drastic as menopause or cancer or something like that. It could be just as simple as you're getting older, right? Body don't act the same. So who wants to go first?
Or your spouse just wants to do something different in life. Right. You know how you turn 50 and you're like, you know what? I don't want to do this job anymore. Or you don't even got to be 50. You know, like you said, I'm 30 now. I'm
I was
different.
gonna say I quit a job in a second.
Right. And once again, that's a change.
Because you have to know your worth.
But at the
and takes.
But in a yin and yang situation, I'm 10 years into my same job. So
He disciplined,
right?
so I don't have to.
My part-time girly and me that stick around.
So I'm gonna let her answer because she's really the one that has to answer this. Because with me, I've had all of these accidents that have finally caught up with me, and so I was so accustomed to being. Normally, I'm not just I was always one of the youngest guys in the room. I was always one of the biggest and strongest guys in the room. One of the most athletic, one of the most hardest, I could really depend on my body to do whatever, to get the job done, from the military to my career as a police officer, go call Big Joe.
Right.
And so my body's like, you can't do that anymore. And it took a good 15 years because the first accident happened in 2006. And then another one in 2012. And so then here comes 2022, really I'll just say 2022. And my body's like, dude, we can't do that. Like, we can't do that anymore. I used to run 5 miles 3-4 times a week, bench press, I could lift whatever, my body, I could lift that. I remember moving whole refrigerators out of people's house. All right, watch out. I got, and my body's like, we're not doing that anymore. And so I fought it for like 15 years. I'm taking all these drugs for pain, you know what I'm saying? And because my body's not reacting. And so my wife's gonna have to tell you what, because it was hard. Like, because so much of my identity was in that persona, you know what I mean? And so that I had to adjust. I'm not that dude anymore. I got to start saying no. I got to start saying I can't do that. I got to start saying I'm not available. I got to start saying, hey man, I got to rest. And my wife she was literally fighting me. Like, honey, you got to lay down. You got to sit down. Because she saw me in pain. She saw me fighting and I didn't have the fight in me. And she saw it. She saw it better than I did. She heard me roll over in the midnight. I'm asleep and I'm thriving in pain, waking her up, and
Which is hard to do.
which is hard. She's a hard sleeper. So I'm in constant pain. I can't do stuff that I used to do, and so I'm going through this adjustment, and it's a real gut shot. It's a hit to my pride. It's a hit to my ego, all of that. And so I'm gonna have to, so honey, how did you adjust to that? How did you adjust to me?
I adjusted just fine. What I'll say is, like, I didn't marry you for your body.
You did?
I like your body. It was nice.
Was?
Our first kiss, actually.
You hear this, America? Was?
I remember our first kiss, he actually picked me up and kissed me, and I was like, okay, your girl kind of thick, so that didn't really happen ever. So I was like, this is awesome. I'm about to marry this guy. Can pick me up off my feet. Okay. So sure, like I understood his strength, but his slowing down meant he had more time for me, right? He had more time for the things that were important. He had more time to focus on pursuing the things of God and going back to school and like not depending on his body to be the thing, right? That made up his identity. So I think you really deepened your connection to Christ in your mind. Like, you use big words. I got to look up. That is so sexy to me. I'm like, what did you say? Right? And so the adjustment is really around.
Right. She said, I didn't understand that. You say what you about to get.
Yes. Like, what? How you spell love it. He knows how to spell it. I'm like, what? So that to me is very attractive. So I just feel like, you know, him being in pain as an adjustment, I don't like to see him in pain, but he's spending more time around what are ways that I could really deepen our relationship, right? If you're at work late and I'm at home, like he's cooking dinner, right? He would never have had time for dinner before working all these hours of overtime, right? So he's just really spent more time in just like, I can't depend on my physical strength, but my emotional strength and my spiritual strength and my emotional strength, those are the areas that are being built, right? And it's just making us closer as a couple, right? And so I appreciate the shift, right?
There you go. All right.
That was a really powerful answer.
So for us, it's very interesting, especially health wise, because I have sickle cell anemia. So in the beginning of the relationship, while we were dating, I tried to hide it. I didn't want her to know.
Motherfucker was in a hospital. I'm like, where is my boyfriend?
and exactly, where's my boyfriend? And sure enough, did you call my mom?
I asked my mom, I'm like, Ma, when he finally did tell me he was in a hospital, and I'm like, oh my God, he's about to die. Like, I've been fortunate enough to be raised by a single mom, right? And I never had to experience sickness and, you know, the different thing, like never had to really be in the hospital as much or anything like that. So like you, when I heard hospital, I'm like, oh my God, like we just started dating like 2 weeks ago. What's going on? You know, and then we were best friends prior to that. So I'm like, Ma, like, can I go spend the night at the hospital with him? Cause like you've been in the hospital for a few days. And she just looked at me and she like, yeah. And so I think I had talked to his mom as well. And it's crazy because we had just started dating. His mom, when we first started dating, right before he graduated high school, his mom was in the hospital. So at that time, we hadn't really been able to meet or have a bond or anything like that. So this is my first time meeting her. So I'm like, listen, I gotta come into the hospital and like, you know what I'm saying? Like I gotta show you that I'm ready for the job, you know? So, but the day that I pulled up with my little overnight bag for the hospital, he ended up getting discharged. But he does have sickle cell anemia, and I had to tell him early on, like I'm big on words. I'm big on like, say what needs to be said. And I'm big on confidence. So I'm like, this is nothing for you to be ashamed of. Like, we were newly dating, but again, I grew up being a nurturer, caregiver, like understanding, even though I've never had to necessarily deal with like hospital stuff, you know, but I'm like, you know, Mama had asthma. So, you know, I'm running to go get the inhaler, like, you good, you know? So with him being that, like, that's been with that and with a couple of other things when it pertains to his health. I'm just on go. What do we need to do? I will call up whoever I need to call so that we can get you help. If you, like you spoke about, you know, your husband being in pain, like that's not a good feeling. I'm not big on medicine. Whereas with his sickle cell anemia, he was being prescribed some deep stuff, right? So we dealt with some of that stuff too. But for the most part, I have been in love with him. I have loved him from the very beginning. So when it comes to being a nurturer naturally, and when it comes to taking care of people, again, I had to grow up at the age of 5. Me and my sister were put in foster care. My sister was a couple months old. I've always had to be there for people. So this was my boyfriend, like at the time, like I'm gonna be there for you, right? So even through marriage, through like the sickness and health thing, that ain't nothing for me. Now it's the other stuff that I might be like, look, you know, but like sickness and health, like God prepared me for that before he even had us meet each other. So when it comes to me being there for him and his health, like you need me to take you to the hospital, like what you want to do, you know? That's just how I am.
And I can be honest, you know, me, like I don't have a fear of death. Like, not saying like I'm just going out here like, yeah. But like, you know, like it's inevitable. We all have to, would you say that morning of mornings where, you know, we sit down with the Father, you know, I'm more conscious of it since an early age. So at the same time, it made me insensitive to other people. It's like, oh, you got the flu. Oh, you got, you got this. You know, you dealing with that. Like, it made me numb to so much stuff, especially for other people, because it's like, you ain't, like, I would look at you like, you ain't dying. You ain't dying. You all right. Brush it off. Right. So, I had a stroke at 9. I've been in the ICU. Like she said, what we just dealt with in the beginning of the year was
Pulmonary embolism, was that what it was?
yeah. So for me having sickle cell, after I had the stroke, they qualified me to start getting blood transfusions, which help with the pain and it don't necessarily help with the pain, but it prevents me from having crisis, which is my platelets, clotting together and stuff. So I've been doing that since I've been 9. They've shifted the treatment to where it's like, first I had a portacath, then I got a dual portacath where they put 2 needles in, one takes blood out and they put the new blood in, like dialysis. And then they gave me a fistula, which is more and more like dialysis, but it's apheresis for plasma. Well, the fistula that's in my body clotted, so they had to put another one in. Well, that had to mature, so you can't use it. So they was like, all right, we're going to put this temporary catheter in your leg. Well, the catheter is an external thing that your body's like, that's not supposed to be here. Right, so it kept clotting. Well, those clots then start traveling through my body, and they went into my lungs. And, it was the day I'd never forget it. I'm walking from the car to go in the house, and I swear I was having a heart attack. And, I'm like, whoa, that was one of those, this is it. I'm about to be out of here. My watch kept going off you're resting and your heart rate is at 175 beats per minute. And it was nothing I can do. So we end up going to the hospital and, they had to do all these treatments. Dude, you're lucky. You're still here. But in my mind, I was just when that day comes, it comes. So things like that have made me insensitive to when my wife has gone through stuff. And I have to get better at transitioning.
And not even deep stuff. I've had some female issues, right, where I've been in the hospital. I'm just dramatic again. Remember, I'm a Cancer, so I cry about everything, right? And I'm not used to, I grew up having seizures, but even then, those weren't necessarily painful. I had been suffering from migraines since the 2nd grade. But over time, it's just kind of okay, I just can't do too much light or something, flashing, stuff like that. So I kind of was okay with that. But for the most part outside of that, I didn't really have anything going on. Now, we talked about menopause. We talked about stuff relating to, you being in the military and stuff. We talked about sickle cell, right? Let's talk about pregnancy and how when my husband says that he never really had a understanding of people going through stuff that might not be as life-threatening as what he's gone through. He was, and I love you so much. We've dealt with this, right? So I'm not coming from that place. But he was very insensitive while I was pregnant. And it really was something that broke us for 2 pregnancies, but we only have 1 child. So it was a lot going on there. And it was a lot of arguments. It was a lot of stuff. And I would just say, for women, keep your foot on their necks because no, I'm really being honest. I'm really being honest.
Look at the camera and say,
keep your foot on their necks. Because
it's that correction we need though. Sometimes.
My pregnancy was so traumatic to the point of really messing with my mental health. And there was a point in my pregnancy, we talked about family, we talked about in-laws. We are married to these wonderful men, right? That at times they haven't been so wonderful, so safe, so supportive. And there was a point in my pregnancy where I tried to drown myself while I was pregnant. But I love God so much because he was like, first of all, girl, what you trying to do? But then he also said, Kia, if you trust me, I'll take care of you. And this is before I'm spiritually so connected. I'm really just in a bathtub, literally. I can't swim. I don't go to swimming pools. Like, what did I think I was doing, right? The water wasn't even that deep. I was going to try to turn around and, curve my, you know what I'm saying? To try to like do something because I did not feel supported. I did not feel, he prioritized work. I didn't have my mom. Like, unfortunately, my mother tried to kill me while I was pregnant because she suffers from severe bipolar disorder. So like my in-laws, like, at one point, they didn't even know we were pregnant. When I told them we was pregnant, I felt like they were more so like, you just not telling us type of thing. Like, y'all told Facebook before y'all told us. So it was a lot of stuff that I was going through. I had just got fired from my job. I was racially profiled and didn't know what was going on, Like we were homeless at one point while I was pregnant. So And after. On some stuff that, like, I'm telling you, when HBO come to me or Stars come to me and be like, look, we want the tea. Like, I'm ready to share, okay? But it was really traumatic. I had never been pregnant before with our son that's here. I never experienced pregnancy before. So it was new to me. Once God got me over that hump I don't like to claim depression, of me being extremely sad and just not knowing what was going on with me. When I'm a type of person, I know everything. Like I'm a problem solver, right? I didn't know what was going on there. So once he got me over that hump, you couldn't tell me anything, and I went through all of that prior to my God revealing to me, trust me, I got you. Postpartum was a breeze. Things was falling down around me, right? Postpartum was a breeze. Like, I bonded with my son like never before. Like, I gave birth on a Thursday evening at 5:24 p.m. Our son was in the NICU until that Saturday. I was back and forth. The hospital was 20 minutes from our place. I breastfed. So I'm like, he's rejecting the bottle. He's colicky, so he's screaming. He won't take the formula. They got him under this light. He got jaundice. Like, it was a lot going on, right? I was literally 20 minutes to drive home. They calling me, Miss Funches, he's not, we don't know what, we don't want him to starve. I'm like, no problem. Literally turning around. I blink to get sleep. I'm literally blinking. That's all I get. It's fine. Turn back around. I sit in there. Zio meet me up there in between work. It was fine. But had him on a Thursday, NICU, discharged him on a Saturday, was in church on Sunday. The next week, we was at a back-to-school event with some animals and stuff, had him out, all the lovely older Black folk women, his ears ain't even mature, like, you got him out here and this, and da-da-da. And I'm like, listen, ma'am, and they love to tell us, like, this generation, ma'am,
You don't know.
ma'am, like, I'm grateful to God that I was able to walk out of the hospital. Ma'am. Like, I don't got time to tell this woman that, you know what I'm saying? Like, I'm really irritated and I'm really, like, trying not to go off on you. But, ma'am, I'm grateful to be able to be here. I'm grateful that I didn't have to have a C-section. I'm grateful that I didn't have to have an epidural, where they said that with an epidural, you have back pains, like, for years to come. Like, by the time I begged for it, they was like, ma'am, it's too late. It's time for you to push. Like, I'm grateful that I was in labor for a very short amount of time.
Yeah,
it took me 3 pushes. Bam. Like,
the doctor was telling her, he's not even ready yet.
She said, stop pushing. I'm like, listen, he's literally trying to crawl out. Like,
right.
No, honestly, like, our son is really, like, really crazy like that.
Right.
But I can say pregnancy, and any time I had to go to, like, the emergency room for, like, stuff minor than sickle cell anemia, right? I was not supportive. The day we were in the hospital, like, he just held my hand. And they have to give me medicine because our son was so active in my stomach, and they trying to, like, prepare me for labor and delivery. And he just kept moving, and they were scared he was going to go back the wrong way. So they tried to give him some medicine, like, inject some medicine into me so that he could kind of, like, relax. It put me to sleep. So I'm waking up every 30 seconds. That's what it felt like. Having contractions, and I'm passing back out. And I just remember every time I woke up, he was on my right side holding my hand. So I was grateful for that. And then we've struggled A little
Still
bit.
struggle.
Not even. We're not still struggling. We struggled a little bit with him adjusting to being a dad because usually Black little girls we have that mommy experience before we actually mothers, right? Because we're natural caregivers, right? We've had a lot of responsibility placed on us at young ages, right? So those that get it, get it. I was one of those, right? He hadn't changed the diaper. He didn't know what a pacifier was. He didn't, you know what I'm saying? So he was really learning. But by the grace of God, I am an educator, right? When I was pregnant, I read What to Expect When You're Expecting. You know, they only give that book to white women, right? I read that book front to back to front, right? I tried to get education. I'm paying attention to stuff. So I'm also an educator. I'm educating him. He's listening. We're talking it through. At that point, we're trying to figure out what type of parents we want to be. What do we want to do? Like conversations that most people don't necessarily have. Or if you're an older parent, you just think, I'm gonna just go with what my mama and my grandmama. And we had I fell out with some people about trying to get my 4-month-old pork and beans and hot dogs and ham hocks and greens.
Get that baby off that bottle.
Right. So, it was a lot. It was a lot. So I can say where he might not have stepped up at one point. And it's all in God's timing. I'm grateful. I am grateful because it worked out, but it did not feel good going through it because I felt extremely unsupported. If anything, his support meant the most to me. And where I wasn't getting that from my best friend, that almost broke me. But
say that in the camera because that's
where I wasn't getting that support from my best friend, that almost broke me during our pregnancy. It's very important when it comes to your spouse, to be there for them at whatever season. Like you said, when we're getting married and we're saying those vows, we don't probably know what we agreeing to. We just signing the terms and conditions like we want to get a little car off the lot. You know what I'm saying? Because my credit went through. Oh, for real? Okay, cool. You know what I'm saying? So we literally went and what they call it, eloping. Yeah. We just went to the courthouse. His mom was like, he ain't gonna marry you. His family was like, and I'm like, watch this. And we just went. So of course I'm gonna agree to everything. I'm just out of spite. I'm yes, and yes, and more yes. But when God puts you through them tests, you really have to show up. Yeah. And in times where you don't want to show up or you're not sure how to show up, they don't write a manual on it. I'm happy you're giving us this platform. You're creating this platform for us to share. We didn't have any support.
Well, they wanted a large sum of money.
Nobody rooted for us. And it's crazy because we go to a big church, pastor in the church, right? And everybody, that's our favorite married couple. Because some of the people that say that, we called you. Okay. People of God. And, sometimes they be the messiest people. And sometimes when people see the light on your life, and when you try to do things according to God and you try to do good things, when unfortunately Black people are not used to having these things or being exposed to these things. My mom was never married. I met each and every one of her boyfriends, whether she introduced me to them or they was sneaking out the front door thinking, we was asleep. And I'm not to put her out there, but I didn't experience any of that. I didn't see any women in my family being loved on. I didn't see any men stand up, step up. It was a bunch of, we ain't gonna go into that. I love my family, right? But it was a bunch of chaos, a bunch of mess. I'm grateful to have a partner, a man, my man, right? A man that we've grown with each other, right?